Welcome to Qi, Body, and Spirit, the Way of Biohacking. This is Dr. Tay and...
Hi, I'm Linda, Nutritionist Sogini. What's up? What's up?
All right, in today's show, we are going to talk about the 5 phases, what is misknown as the 5 elements, but it should be called the 5 phases. And this is a parallel theory to energetic medicine, to the chakras that we talked about in the last episode. The 5 phases, I want to first talk about the actual character that describes the 5 phases and the differentiation between 5 elements. Is that 1, 5 elements is a mistranslation. Because if you look at the characters of Wu Xing, Wu meaning 5, Xing means moving. And in Korean, there's a word called 행동, which means action. And it talks about heng meaning there's change. And Wu Xing meaning the 5 transitions or the 5 phases. And it consists of water, wood, fire, earth, metal, or aka crystals. We got this Pinterest with some trying to sell people some water bottles. Okay, let me see. And if we could get to a picture here, I think this is a good. Let's go with this one. Yeah. Okay, I think this is a good one to show. Okay. All right. I think this is going back to the... Okay, here we are. All right. So, if you're looking at this screen, you'll see that water makes the wood grow, and wood makes the fire grow. And the fire produces earth and ashes, and the earth, over a long period of time, create what they call crystals or metal. And you see that in the expression of a giant mountain where the heavy iron ore is at the bottom and the light crystals, the ice, on top of the mountain. And ice has a tendency to melt and the cycle starts all over again. And within that cycle, there is a control cycle where water puts out the fire and the fire melts the crystals. The crystals or the metal chops wood, and wood holds the earth, and the earth dries out the water. And this is the law of nature that we see outside of our body. And the ancient people believed that these laws of nature not only applies to the earth, but also because we're part of the earth, therefore it applies to us. So Linda, do you know about the 5 phases? And if you do, in what ways do you come to use it and stuff like that?
So I started learning about the 5 phases because my mom is a feng shui master. Mm-hmm. So she's well-versed in metaphysics. Okay. And in teaching about feng shui, it's all about relation of feng. Very literal translation is air. Yeah. Shui is water. Yeah. So learning about your natural environment and then learning about how these different phases interact with each other, then you could gauge the energy of the space and how to balance the energy and harmonize the energy. And she also does life reading. So everyone is born with inherent phases in their birth charts. Yeah. And then knowing how different phases are playing in the cycle of the day, cycle of the week, the month, the year, that will affect how your own fortune is. Mm-hmm. So again, learning how to harmonize these and knowing how to read the patterns of nature and using that to your advantage.
Wow. That's like I got, in my studies, I've encountered the medical end, the study, but I know there's a whole, like another area how 5 phases is used, and wow, I got to pick your mom's brain next time I see her
Which is what I think is so interesting about the 5 phases, because it's all natures of metaphors of nature, and you can apply it to really any aspect of the human experience. So one way that we use it a lot here is in relation to your health and your body. You could also, like last week we talked about chakras and food, and then you could also think about how foods fit into the 5 phases as well.
Like, because I learned Eastern medicine first, and then when I got introduced to the chakra system, I always had this like comparative analysis of it. And the Chinese theory of the 5 phases is interwoven so much, and I always wanted to find something parallel in the chakra system. I think I just didn't encounter it in terms of the depths. So in like fundamental theory, like when you're learning the basics of Eastern medicine, you're first like, okay, how does this really, relate to human health and stuff like that? And what they begin to do is that water each element has the yin yang organs, and then there is the fire, which has 4 organs, which encompasses the 12. So the 12 numbers of the celestial cycles, because they say that a human being is when heaven touched the earth, created man. And it's kind of cool because like in the Bible, it says like, God molded the earth and breathed life into us. So there's that heaven-earth connection that created man, or I should say humanity now. And it's kind of poetic. And because the sky, or the heavens, has the number 12 in it, in Eastern and Western, philosophy, there's like the horoscopes, the Pisces, Aquarius, Aries, all of that. And in the Eastern sense, there is the 12 zodiacs, right? And the zodiacs, when the 12 and the 5 meets together, creates 60, and 60 is a number for humanity. Then from there, you're able to extrapolate some sort of data and its complexity to determine how health works. And I don't think it's a perfect system, but it kind of gives you a guideline. So just to go real quick, like the water element, or the water phase, I should say, it fundamentally deals with kidney and bladder. The wood is, I'm going to go back to water. Well, because kidney and bladder fundamentally deals with water going through your body. Like the kidneys filter it, the bladder holds it until you let go. One is yin and one is yang. Kidneys being yin and the bladder being yang. Next is wood, like the liver. If you cut pieces of the liver, it grows back. It has a very regenerative process, and therefore it's part of the wood. And wood, it has to do with liver and gallbladder. And heart is fire is the phase where it has the 4, and the 4 organs consisting of is 1, the heart, small intestine, pericardium, and triple burner. And triple burner is a weird organ because it doesn't exist in Western sciences. So when I was in school, we would understand as the triple burner. In Chinese, they call it the sanjiao. It is the trunk that's divided into lower burner, middle burner, upper burner. And it's the organ that holds all the organs together somehow. And I think not too long ago, like 3 to 5 years ago, they were researching how cancer was spreading in the body, and they found what they call the interstitium, and it's like this lymphatic / fascial system that how cancer travels inside the body and spreads. And when they come out with the research, all the Chinese medicine practitioners were like, oh, that's the sanjiao, and so there's that. And the earth is, the next phase is the earth, which is the stomach and spleen. And the stomach, if you put anything to the earth, it kind of like digests everything, like you get the bones left over. And that's like how the earth is kind of defined as. Like if you eat food, everything becomes digested. And the spleen, although it's part of the lymphatic system, in Eastern theory is part of the digestive system that has an upward energy, where if you really think about it, stomach chi has a downward effect, because the minute it goes into your mouth and you chew it, eventually goes down the esophagus to stomach, and then to your small intestine, the large intestine, to your rectum, and it comes out. So it's got this downward function, and spleen has that upward function where it has the ability to circulate all the nutrients throughout your whole body. And last, which is the metal, and you have the lungs that look like two mountain peaks in your chest. And then deep inside the earth is your large intestine, because it crystallizes everything and makes everything hard, so it comes out. And yeah, this theory, because it corresponds to the 12 organs wrapped up into the 5 phases package, and then everything is thought in terms of 5. Everything's organized into 5 different categories, like the 5 senses, the 5 tastes, and of course it's not perfect, because you have tastes like bland, the 5 colors, and the 5 directions, which is north, south, east, and west, and the center being earth. So you can draw this model in different ways, and you can always still come up with some sort of system that wraps around it.
Something that I find really interesting about the 5 phases is how it's also correlated with emotions. So even though, yes, Chinese medicine, there is this say this harmony in the phases, but it could also relate to how the person is going through emotionally. If they're feeling a lot of anxiety, it's usually associated more with the heart, fear, with the kidneys. What else? Worry is with the stomach, the earth element. What are the other ones?
Sadness and grief is the lungs.
That's the lungs. Yeah.
And the cool thing about it is that these things are connected to, is interwoven, meaning the 5 phases connected to the organs, and the organs are connected to the organ sounds. Like the lung sound is because it comes from the lungs, that when you're like 7 years old and you can't get your ice cream and you're crying your balls out, and if you really think about it, that sound comes from your lungs because you're sad. In sports, you hear a lot of boxers make this sound tss, 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 they that's the wit sound. And in Shaolin Kung Fu, that's the fire sound. So there's all of these things that deals with different sounds, the way the 5 senses, the emotions. And I think the emotions are a huge component. And when I was in school, I would study what the school has taught me so that I could pass the test. But I always preferred classical theory. And the classical theory was more, I would say, more clinical, less theoretical. Water dealt with fear and courage. Wood would deal with anger and uprush. Uprush is when you get fired up with some sort of energy to change the world, the way revolutionary spirits did, like Gandhi, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, or pioneers, right? They're fueled by, I want to create change. Fire has to do with joy, love, and on the negative side is anxiety. On that spectrum. Earth is a lot of foresight, I would say, and it deals with worry, right? And worry is a negative connotation, but the positive aspect of, because everything's in yin yang pairs, is planning. And I think women are able to be more attuned to planning, because when they're planning a wedding, everything has to be perfect in certain ways. Men, we do plan, when we go to camping and stuff like that, I need this, but you're not worried about it. So if you really think about how to transform negative emotions to positive emotions, oh, it's gonna rain tomorrow, oh no, then you get all this worrying about it. But if you plan it right, I have my rain boots, I have my umbrella, I have my raincoat, then your worries, because you planned it, kind of disappear. So that's the cool applications of Eastern theory. And last, metal is like sadness, sorrow, grief, loss, and the positive side is having compassion for people. And the, what is that? The emotion that doesn't get talked about in all of these things are unexpressed. And unexpressed is, you know, you can range from trauma to, like, for example, if you decide to not to tell the truth, then to cover up that truth, and if you tell a lie, you keep on telling lies because you couldn't tell the truth. And I always found that like really cool, right? And so like it's got this like interwoven theory, and I have to say it's not perfect, but it does give you a framework to work around it, and it's got like really significance.
I also recently have been exploring how these 5 phases fit in with our calendar and our seasons. So we could start with water. Water is associated with winter, which transitions into wood, spring. So spring is usually like sprouts start coming up, the uprush, the beginning. Fire is summer. And then I'm going to skip over earth real quick because that one's a little complicated. And then autumn is the lungs. What is it? The metal, gold element. I always associate it with like gold, silver, and autumn. So earth is a little more complicated because there's earth within all of it. So the end of every season, there's actually a bit of earth in it, and that's kind of the transition between seasons. Earth is also associated with late summer. And I find it really interesting in terms of like choosing foods and learning how to eat with the seasons and choosing different, like for example, for springtime and the liver, you want to choose more like fresh herbs and fibrous foods, and these are foods that are typically available during springtime as well. So learning how to eat with the seasons and understanding the phases and how to weave it all together.
I can't find it on the internet, but in the academic textbook, they do talk about where Earth is in the middle and north, south, east, and west, and they draw the 5 phases diagram in a different light with different diagrams, which kind of better explains like the different variations of and how you can interpret the 5 phases. In modern, like all the pictures, diagrams, heart is always placed on top now for some reason. In traditional theory, earth was always placed on top. And when I was in school, when you learn about the 3 burners, the sanjiao, right? How you convert Jing, Qi, and Shen. Jing meaning essence, the seed energy of who you are, eventually grows and transforms Qi, and eventually you flower as a person, able to give back to the world. So first, when you're seed energy, you pull in, you create roots all around you, and then you just grow, and then you transform from a seed to a plant, and the plant creates leaves to absorb more. So you're able to take in from your roots, the air, and then you flower to give back. And the Jing, Qi, Shen, from the organ theory, it works from the below the belly button, your sexual organs, right? Get it? You get the seed energy look over there, and your kidneys look like kidney beans, right? And then you have the digestive burner, where it transforms whatever you eat and makes it part of who you are. And the upper respiratory system is the heart and the lungs that interacts with the air, right, and the senses. But in Qi Gong, the lower burner is considered still Jing, right? But the Qi is in your head, and the Shen is in your chest. And in Qigong theory, you're supposed to convert your Jing, connect to the head, your Qi, and then you're supposed to bring that energy into your heart. And reason being is your heart is filled with a lot of bad stuff, like desires, and a lot of meditation theory, they try to get let go of attachments, and like love is like one of the hardest things to do. It's hard to let go of your family, your friends, your loved ones, and by learning to let go, and if you're able to bring like the creative energy of how do you say, like Mozart, you know, like people who tap into this, and if you're able to bring it into your heart, like your energy radiates with like giving stuff, I guess. And it's that's Jing Qi Shen theory built into the 5 phases theory. And so like the 5 phases theory ties into like the number 1, because it brings everything to one theory. And there's 2, the yin yang that's built into it. The 3 is what is that? The Jing Qi Shen model. And they call it the Sanyuan, the 3 originals, what they call the 3 primordials.
Okay.
And if you look at the 3 primordial colors, it's like red,
yellow
and blue, right? And if you combine those 3 colors together, you get the color black. However, in light, if you combine those 3 colors together, you get bright light. Not like, so it has this like, how do you say, very pragmatic understanding of how it goes down. So I posted this from Wikipedia. So wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And then it goes into the different emotions, the yin yang organs, the senses. Like the wood, the liver opens up in the eyes, the fire opens up in the tongue. And they have the hours, the spring, and let's see, the earth is summer final, the end of summer. So they have these things, and of course there's different schools of thought that interprets the 5 phases differently to their model to make it a fit. So you hear different traditions interpret the 5 phases differently at the same time.
So tell me a little bit more in how you treat someone. Let's say they come in and they have a lot of anxiety. They're really stressed out. We see that a lot when people come in for light touch technique.
Yeah.
And how would you treat them in terms of analyzing them using the 5 phases? Or what type of foods would you recommend, or exercises they do?
Okay. Okay. Let's first go to herbology.
Okay.
In modern herbology, that's outside of Eastern theory, really talks about the science of it. How do you say? What is the actual chemical compound that makes it help, right? For a situation, and does it have a calming effect and all of these things? And those things don't necessarily really are clinical, right? And what makes it work better from a functional relationship is what it tastes like.
Okay.
So, for example, in Beijing, they had this whole study in the cancer ward where there's a herb called astragalus, and it's called Huang Qi. And astragalus had the blood work shows before and after. It raises the immune system, right? Your white blood cell count increases. So what did people do? Let's make Huang Qi extracts and give it to people as IV drips to help cancer, because they need to increase their immune system. They need more white blood cells, right? And everyone died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, everyone in that study died. Cancer grew faster and stuff like that because Huang Qi astragalus is sweet. And now we know, sugar feeds cancer, right? And in Eastern theory, you're not supposed to tonify the pathogen or strengthen, what's killing you. And so in that sense, you would have to use things like bitter herbs, right? And bitter herbs is part of the fire. You burn off the cancer, right? The bitterness also, if anyone has taken MSM, right?
What's MSM?
MSM is, let me look at the actual name. methylsulfonylmethane. It's this white powder. It's really good for your cartilage, and it has a very anti-inflammatory effect. And people wonder why. Well, an Eastern practitioner will tell you because it tastes very bitter. Bitter has a very anti-inflammatory effect. And so the 5 phases theory has the 5 tastes built in. And in order to balance you out, if you're a very stressed out person, eating sour can help in theory, right? Lemon and lemon peel has the ability to move things, right? So in that sense, anxiety, treating things like anxiety is you can go to the wood element and you can treat the wood channel, which is the liver channel, like liver 3, liver 13. It helps move a lot of the energy in the body. So using acupuncture, it can help in that regard. And if lungs also deals with breathing, the light touch technique, which activates breathing, right, which activates the lungs in some sort of indirect way, has the ability to release a lot of anxiety. So I think 5 phases theory can help you diagnose and treat within that paradigm. And what's really fascinating to me is the Korean acupuncture theory, which is the 4-needle technique. A lot of American practitioners understand it as the 5 elements, which drives me crazy. And if you look at the Korean model, they use 4-needle technique, and they use 4 needles to balance out each of the organ. And I used this theory to strengthen the lungs with extra points, and surprisingly it gets rid of allergies, including like food and peanut allergies, and the success rate is like above 90%, and I've seen that work a lot. And it's so weird because if you, according to this theory, you go to in order to strengthen the lung, you go to the metal point on the the earth point on the metal channel, because earth strengthens the metal, right? And you sedate the fire point on the fire channel, because fire controls metal. So if you reduce that aspect, you're able to strengthen the metal more. So, and because each channel, you have 4 fire channels, 2 metal channels, one being one yin, one being yang, your lung and large intestine. So you go to the lung channel and you tweak the fire point and all of these different elements according to the 5-element theory. Then somehow by making the metal energy stronger in your body, you're able to get rid of things that are related to the lungs. And I had this girl that came to my office. She had some sort of like inflammation in her nervous system that would make her constantly nauseous. And there was several diagnoses from like some of the best doctors on the East Coast, from Boston University to like John Hopkins, and the parents took her everywhere, but she kept on having this nausea. And one of the name of the diagnosis is migrainous neuralgia or something like that. And there was no cure. So this girl was suffering from like nausea constantly while she was in school. And I strengthened the stomach organ, because the stomach organ has this ability to go down, right? So I'm using like it's like Pokemon cards. You're fighting a water element Pokemon, and to fight it, you might want to use lightning, or things like that. And the fact that this works in health is mind-boggling. And this is one aspect of Eastern medical theory. I can't put my scientific mind to understand this Like I have a very hard time doing that, and the reason why it's hard because I cannot rationalize it from any scientific means. But in Eastern theory, it makes sense. And the crazy thing is, like, when you first learn theories like this, you're like, okay, someone's going to pay me money and I got to try this on people. And then you tell the patient at the beginning of your career, like, I don't know if this is going to work, right? But I'm going to give it my best. And patients come back like, I don't know what you're doing, but this is working. And then you're thinking to yourself, is this placebo effect, right? And then you treat your second patient and then it still works and it's 100%, right? And I would say this theory works close to 90% of the times. And of course, you know, you have cases where it doesn't work, right? Because there's no such thing as like absolute, you know, things. And I had this one kid who suffered from like severe allergies, and he was 10 years old, and he was in a baseball team. And the spring season, he had a hard time, you know, concentrating, and because he's just suffering on the baseball season. And I felt bad, so I told the parent, like, okay, next year, just come back, because I want to see this work, right? And the mom brought in the kid, and this mom has nothing good to report. It's not working. And then the husband's like, I told him to come back here because, you know, it's working. He's off medication, right? But it didn't work the first year,
right?
But the second year, he still had symptoms of itchiness and inflammation, but it was not where he needed medication. And the third year he came back, the mom's like, it's not working. And the father's like, well, he's hardly taking any medication, right? But I think by the fourth year, he was completely off of medication, and it worked. So, like, that's why I give it like close to above 90%, because there are very few people that it didn't work on. Yeah.
So the 5 phases to me is very nuanced, and I'm still struggling to understand the relationships just because I grew up with a different paradigm. Understanding wood and metal is like completely new to me, and like in practicing tarot, for example, there's the air element. Yeah. And same thing with astrology, but there's no air element here. It's wood and metal. So how would a common person, a lay person, apply this 5 phases theory in everyday life, or what should we take away from this podcast?
One thing I will say, everything that has a beginning has an end. And that's a famous quote from the Matrix trilogy, right? Everything that has a beginning has an end.
There's no fourth movie.
Right. So, like, I would say wood is the start, right? I'm going to use as a wood as a starting point. It begins to a seed energy that begins to sprout and grow and reach into the heavens, right? So you're just starting out, and that's when it's hard, and that's when you're vulnerable. Just like when you're starting a business, a marriage, or a relationship, things are just beginning. It's at its infancy, right? And then you reach a growth where you're flourishing like fire. It's spreading out easily. It's not so hard. And then once you reach that peak, right, where the ashes, so if you think about fire, it reaches a certain point, but what's above the fire? The heat and the ash that's above it, right? And then it reaches its peak, and that's the earth. And earth has a long range from the bottom of the earth, where it's the heaviest, and at the top, the ash that's floating with the heat, right? And it eventually slowly comes down, right? And that's where you experience a lot of the things coming down. And then the metal is the part where you start consolidating, and then you figure out what's important to you, and you get rid of the excess. And you see that in like imperial expansions, you don't have control over the whole territory. So what do? You keep what is necessary, and then you lose everything that you don't need, right? And eventually, what is hard eventually breaks down and goes back to water again. That's one aspect of seeing cycles from beginning to end. Everything that has a beginning has an end, just like the years or seasons. And that's the creation and, one might say, destruction cycle. In terms of emotions and how to use it, is if you are sad, right? Guess what controls sadness? Your mental energy is joy. So if you get, more joy energy, it combats sadness. And if you are angry, right? Metal controls wood, right? So having more compassion, right, towards your anger or the people around you where you're being too critical. And you see this in very, I'm going to say righteous people. What I mean by righteous people, they don't do nothing wrong, and these people get easily angered because they see every people around them that's doing wrong. And righteous people have a tendency to be very critical to other people. They're happy to voice what people are doing wrong, and nobody wants to hear them. But if that person was to control their anger or their uprush energy with more compassion and say, oh, I can understand this person, why this person is suffering from ADHD, or this person has this background, this type of upbringing, and therefore I can understand more, then you're able to control that anger. And if you're always worried about different things, right? You're like, oh my God, then you have to be more proactive, which is the wood energy, right? So there are ways to control like an emotional imbalance that people may have in regards to that. So I think that's a very practical way to come to about understanding it. So you can map out, if I have this thing coming in, I'm planning a wedding and I'm worried about all these things, then just make the proper time to plan everything out, right? The Yin Yang balance. If you are having a lot of anxiety, right, that means you have a lot of heart energy or fire energy. You just need to balance that scale with more joy. What do you love? Focus your energy on those things. If you have a lot of sadness, right, and once again back to the Avatar series, right? Aang had to transform him losing the Air Nation people, all those loss that he felt. He had to transform it into a new love, right, which was Katara. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember in one of my meditation, like one thing that I was really sad about was I had my dog for 17 years, and I had to, take her to a vet and put her down because I knew she was suffering. Like, it was not a good way for her to go like that. And I remember going to my meditation and like transforming all of that sadness I had into a new love, and that was me. I had to focus on, I think these practical meditations of transforming energy, because the laws of thermodynamics indicate that energy is never created nor destroyed. You always have to transform your energies. And if you are suffering from sadness because you lost a dog, then you should transform that energy, because if it dwells in you for too long, it can hurt you and damage you. And teaching yourself to be more fluid, that energy is always transforming, because if you have a bad day, one day you're going to have a good day. Right. And a lot of people tends to lose focus of that.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with how the main message is that everything is always shifting and changing, and it works in cycles. Everything that comes to a beginning will have an end, and endings also mean transformation and new beginnings. So it begins anew again. Yeah.
And you see this in like martial arts, and I'm not going to say like I'm a martial artist. I'm a very beginner because I just started taking kendo, right? And one thing I always knew is that that circle that in Buddhism, the Zen circle, it starts in the dot but ends up in the circle, but you continue the circle. And I heard a martial artist say, you start with a blank piece of paper and then you start somewhere, and once you come full circle, you have reached your first black belt, your first dan. And the second time you come around, you go revisit all the aspects of your first dan in training. You just become better at it. You become second dan, third dan, fourth dan. And I think it's very important for people to experience, like, what is that? The little I know about the the horoscopes of Asian thought, the way your mom understands feng shui, and that is that the first 12 years, because there's 12, the first 12 years, your job is to eat and survive. That if you're a 12-year-old and you're thinking about what am I going to do with my life, well, just eat, grow, and survive, right? Physically, from 12 to 24, your next cycle, right? You're supposed to mature, right? Develop your mind, right? And from 24 to 36, you're supposed to experience life, right? And by experiencing life on your third cycle, right, you're able to gain some sort of like, okay, I know what life is about. I ate, I matured, and I experienced 12 years of it as an adult, right? And the fourth cycle, from 36 to 48, you're supposed to come to an understanding, okay, I did it better this time, right? And when you reach your 60th birthday, which Asian families celebrate, like you reach, because you come back to your own element and your own zodiac year.
And it's 5 full cycles.
Yeah, 5 full cycles of 12. And you're supposed to look back and say, what have I accomplished? And you're supposed to have grandchildren, in the traditional sense. And then at that point, from what I understand from my teachers, is that you're supposed to have a goal. At your 60th birthday, and if you don't, you die early. And this ties into the blue zone theory, where the Japanese people, the concept of ikigai, what are we supposed to do with our lives? And there was a guy who was living 98 years old, and this guy was a crazy fisherman, and he said, today I woke up, I had a good night's sleep, and I'm gonna go out there in my little boat and fish so I could bring fish to my grandchildren, right? That was his life's purpose. Nothing else, not like paying bills or anything like that. It was very simple in that aspect. And I think having that, fortitude of I have a mission, right, is very important. Yeah. Okay. For those who have been listening, I would like you to post comments, hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll be coming out with more content. And one of the things that we're actually preparing in the upcoming episodes is about flexibility, and we would like our Kendo members and the people who come to actually listen to these episodes, because we want to really dive into the science aspect of it. We did 2 episodes kind of like in the woo-woo metaphysics,
right.
Energetic theory, but now we want to go back to a lot of the science, and we're going to present you guys with a lot of so stay tuned for those things, because stretching is not talked about a lot, and we want to talk about in performance in sports.
Right.
If you're an athlete, stretching too much can be bad right before your event, so we want to talk about the science behind that. So stay tuned for more episodes. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Peace.
Bye-bye.